What's up everyone, Tom from the Airsoft headquarters here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be taking a look at the G&G PRK9 series of Airsoft rifles. One of the most iconic rifle platforms within the real world, I believe, is going to be the AK style platform. Now the AK has been around for many years, has seen a lot of real world wars, and over the time that it has been utilized, you see them in newspapers, documentaries, National Geographics, movies, video games, like even futuristic video games. They're always going to have an AK style platform with that rock feature. And within the real world, there are AKs that have modifications and adaptations to help keep it within the current era that is being utilized. So currently, within the last 20 years, there was a creation of the 9mm AK, or the PP19 Vitias, which, you know, certain AK enthusiasts are going to say that that's not a real AK, but come on, it's close enough. And really, the PP19 is going to be the Russian-style MP5, because it is going to be a 9x19 parabellum, or 9mm caliber, that takes, you know, the thin stick style of magazines, very similar to that of the MP5. In the PP19, while certainly one of the most AK styles, it kind of falls short as far as truly being an AK SMG, because with the 9x19 or with the PP19, you need to slide the magazine into the receiver. You know, personally, in order to keep a true AK look, you need to have the rock motion to it. So the G&G PRK9, I think, is going to be the most AK SMG that you can possibly get, because again, it takes the 9x19 style of magazine, and you have to rock the magazine into that receiver. When we were at SHOT Show 2020 and Picture for Proof, there were real firearm companies that were taking the older style of AK with the wooden handguards, the short barrel, you know, without the stock or the underfolding stock, and they just modified the receiver to take Glock magazines, which, you know, cool for pushing the envelope, but even for me, not as an AK enthusiast, I'm not an AK guy, but that was still a little weird in my opinion. So this, I think, is the most AK you can get and still be an SMG class. So that's what we have, that's what we're gonna talk about today. Let's get right into it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give you the specs right away. Not even going to tease out or anything like that, just give you all of the crucial information right away. So we have three different models of the PRK9. We have the PRK9, PRK9-S, which is the model with the retractable stock, and then the PRK9-L, which is the, you know, the long barrel variant. So with the PRK9, we have 4 pounds 5 ounces, a total length of 14 inches, a velocity of around 338 feet per second with 0.2 O's, with a average between 10 total shots. Inner barrel length of 128 millimeters. The handguard length from the most usable rail space is about 4 inches. Rounds per second, oddly enough, this needs to be included because there is discrepancy between these three models, is 15 rounds a second. And these are going to come with the 40-round mid-cap magazines. The PRK9-S is 5 pounds 7 ounces, has a folded length of 14¼ inches, so that's in this configuration right here. With the stock all the way in, it comes in at 22½ inches, and all the way out is 26¼ inch. FPS average with 10 shots with 0.2 O's is 346 feet per second. A inner barrel length of 128 millimeters, and the same 4-inch length of handguard that is with the regular PRK9. Rounds per second with an 11.1 is 15 rounds a second, same as PRK9. This one also comes with a 40-round magazine. And then we have the PRK9-L. So that's a very long rifle. Comes in at 6 pounds, 4 ounces, has a total length of 34.5 inches, a velocity of 388 feet per second with .20s with a 10-shot average, inner barrel length of 407 millimeters, handguard length is 12 inches. The rounds per second, and this is where the discrepancy lies, is 20 rounds a second. And we'll get into that in just a couple minutes. And again, it's going to come with the 40-round magazine. Now, with the same 3 different types of rifles, there are also 3 different types of magazines. Like I said, they are going to come with the 40-round mid-cap, which has those imitation bullets on the inside there. There is also a 200-round high cap, which is going to be completely clear, so you can see exactly how many BBs you have left, and you can see that internal mechanism on the inside there. And then a 1,730-round drum style of magazine, which works very similarly to a high cap, but you just need to turn the front face of the magazine in order to engage that internal mechanism. With the G&G drum magazines, we prefer this style because it's a little bit more basic of internal components. There's no wiring, there's no batteries, there's no buttons that can go wrong. It is all completely dependent on the rotation of the wheel here. There is the flash magazine from G&G or from other companies as well. Not just for the PRK9, but for other types of rifle platforms. They still work, but one of our greatest concerns that we see is with that wheel or that wire on the very bottom of the magazine, people can overextend that wire length and can completely pull that wire out, rendering the magazine completely useless. So we don't really like the flash magazine style for drum magazines either. While they work, and the battery operated ones will still work, you know, our favorites are still the manual wind style. So starting off, we're going to be going over the PRK9. Now, why they didn't go with the PRK9-S model, you know, called this one the short because it clearly is the shortest, I don't know. I wasn't part of that naming process, but we're still going to go over it. So overall, it's a complete metal build with the exception externally of a polymer orange tip and a polymer grip here. Absolutely everything else externally is going to be all metal. So right up front, we do have the federally mandated orange tip. Immediately back of there, we have the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock position of rail system. And these are going to be Picatinny, and from the most forward length to the last position here is going to be a total of 4 inches. Now, on the very bottom part here, you only get 5 total rail segments, and you do need to be very selective as to the type of grips you utilize. I don't see enough people talk about this with the PRK9 series, is that if you just put a grip on, even at the forward-most position to where it's not even in a rail slot, it's sitting on the very end of the rail system as far as the centermost part there, as you can see. Even with that there's not nearly enough room for me to get the lip of the magazine up into the receiver far enough for it to lock and ride in. So what I do have is on the PRK9-S variant is I do have a model up to the grip that you could utilize, and even with gripping the magazine, you still have enough clearance, enough room for you to rock that magazine in and rock that magazine out. So you do need to be very careful there. Another thing that I noticed with that front part of the receiver is that you do have on the bolt your rotating handle, in travel, in cases, it's out of the way. That's one of the things that I think bugs a lot of the AK users is the fact that on the bolt, it does extrude out quite a bit and can deform cases or even break through cases. So very cool that they included a feature where that knob rotates out of place. It's a little annoying, however, when the back position of rail segments on your right-hand side are cut short and you physically cannot put anything on the last 3 rail segments because that, charging handle is in the way. So that is one of the concerns that I would have there. Physically, nothing on the very top of the rail system as far as that, that handguard system. But on the very back here, we do have that dust cover, which does have plenty of rail segment space, equipped with a removable rear iron sight. The front iron sight post on all of these is stationary. It is permanent. You cannot remove it unless you take a Dremel and you permanently deface the rifle system, which is not always great. What is great, however, is that the dust cover is going to be hinged, which means as you take that dust cover, it stays in place, it doesn't hang loose, and especially with the ones that are not hinged, with the button on the back here, if that does work itself loose or somehow, becomes dislodged, your entire dust cover could fall off, and there goes your optic, whatever attachments you have on there. Not the case with hinge systems. Very easy to install and, take away or take up if you want to install or remove your battery. The battery compartment space is the very top part here. You do need to be selective as to the types of batteries you utilize because of how small it is, because it is sitting underneath that dust cover. Also with the fact that if you do want to utilize your charging handle, the thicker battery you have that rests underneath there is going to create more pressure and possibly even, make it to where you can't utilize your charging handle to the fullest, which really, I don't like the idea of having a charging handle that you can have all the way back. With the selector switch, you can rotate it up so it does hold open. A cool feature on some of the more modernized AKs. In this case with Airsoft, you do have access to that rotary hop-up unit, which is a TDC style. Allows for very, very precise control as to the amount of pressure onto the top of the BB. Very awesome. With the selector switch specifically, you can push it down into that full auto and then semi-automatic. A little backwards for regular AR users. Totally get you. The middle segment is full auto, and all the way bottom is semi-automatic. So if you're in a pinch and your selector is up for whatever reason in safety, you can quick throw that all the way down, and that will get you into semi-automatic really quickly. But with that charging handle backwards, I would be very careful as to catch that to make sure it doesn't slam all the way forward. These are still Airsoft toys. They don't have the greatest of material components inside of them, so you do need to be careful as to how much force you put onto these components. Overall, it's a little stiff right out of the box as far as getting that selector to move all the way downwards. They do have a ledge specifically for your right hand finger. Sorry, left-hand users, there is no selector on the left-hand side of the rifle, only for us righties, So you put your pointer finger on the ledge there, push all the way down, and now you're in semi-automatic. Push it up, which you do need to be careful. I sometimes tend to over-rotate because I apply too much force, so I do need to get my other hand, either on the handguard and adjust with my right hand, or keep my right hand here and then lean my hand over and adjust to that full auto spot. Just to let you guys know, for the future, the magazine release paddle has enhanced surface areas on the left and right hand side of that paddle. So as you rock that magazine in, if you are right-handed, very easy to get access to that. And on the left-hand side, very easy to get access to that as well. With traditional style of AKs, they don't have nearly as much surface area to hit with your thumb, and so can be a little annoying trying to get those out. A metal trigger, which we will be going over in a little bit, always stuff to mention and talk about further on down the road. Polymer grip, it's the ergonomic style of grip from G&G, so we do like it a whole lot. G&G in our experience has a great time producing very good high strength polymer, so going with a polymer grip by no means is any type of issue from us. The very back part here is going to be Picatinny. This is going to be a new feature for a lot of players, and I do have it dressed up with a quick detach sling point, and there's a couple reasons for this. So with the Picatinny here, it doesn't allow you to utilize a traditional style of stock. Now there are going to be adapters out there, or even SIG or SIG-esque stocks that will attach to Picatinny and will rotate and fold out, so you can keep something low profile, adjustable, and very modern if you wanted to go with that. In this case specifically, I thought that this overall rifle platform allowed for a very good option for a sniper or machine gun backup. And let me explain to you how that will work. So with most sniper style platforms, they do have a engagement distance. So if anyone wants to utilize their bolt action rifle within 100 feet, that's a straight up no-go if they have an X amount of velocity. So they have to resort to some type of secondary, whether that be a pistol. Pistols are not always the greatest option, limited magazine capacity in a lot of cases, as well as the fact that with that shorter inner barrel, there's not a whole lot of BB stabilization, allowing for not a whole lot of consistency or accurate shot placement for that emergency quick follow-up. Like, you just got around a corner, you have your bolt action rifle, and there's a dude 50 feet away. You can't use your sniper rifles, you have to go to something. And in my case with pistols, they don't have a whole lot of consistency. So in comes, typically your SMG. So with this guy, being that it is a sling attached system, see if I can throw this on in the correct fashion. Wha-bam. So this would sit either on the left-hand side, tucked back behind on your right, or even dangling, however you want to go with that. And because there's no stock, now the sling is going to act as your stock. So you're going to be pushing forward on that rifle, put the selector into whatever. With certain fields, they do have jewel limits to where you could utilize full auto if it is an SMG caliber of rifle system, which pistol caliber, get it to where it's a low enough velocity, now you're running full auto. So now you have that in the middle selector. Even with a right hand or one hand pushing forward, right, I have this over here, now I have a semi-stable shooting platform as I'm pushing out against the sling, and I can lay down some mean shots versus trying to do this free-handed. It's still 4 pounds, and even though I do work out pretty often, I'm not going to have the greatest of shooting platform. So having a type of sling option, this is the same system that they do with the MP5Ks. Just have it on a sling and push outwards, and now that's your stabilized shooting platform. Very unique. So that's why I went with the quick detach sling attachment on the very back plate here. It's not going to come with it, so just be aware of that. And that is certainly an option for anyone if they want to utilize that. So next up, we have the PRK9-S for the short variation. Now, why they called this one the short one, I'm not exactly sure. Again, wasn't part of the naming committee. But even with the stock all the way folded forward, it is still slightly longer than the most previous model that we talked about. So I think this should have been the PRK9, and this one the PRK9-S. That is the stockless version. So externally, this one's going to have the exact same features as the previous model, with the exception of the folding stock. Now, with the folding stock here, it is not attached to a Picatinny. They just remove the Picatinny and attach it directly to the back of the receiver, so you don't have nearly as much customization there, but you do have a stable shooting platform, which is a 6-position adjustable, retractable stock. So that is one advantage. The entire hinge and adapter system and the buffer tube are all going to be full metal. The only thing polymer on this assembly is going to be the construction of the stock system, which again is from G&G, so overall we have very good success with their polymer overall, so very, very, very happy. It does have a hard rubber on the very back point here, with no recoil. It doesn't really particularly matter, but I think that the rubber here is going to help with putting, some type of friction or resistance against the stock moving. So if this was a pure polymer backplate, it probably would be shifting around even more. And as you apply more pressure backwards into your shoulder, that's going to help keep it as stable as possible. So there are some reasons as to why they did it. They do have this slight curve here, which is supposed to allow it to curve up into your shoulder a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, a little bit more comfortable. So they do have a couple of reasons there. They do have one sling position here, But that's going to be for a general loop, nothing as far as a quick detach on the rifle itself. So you are at a little bit of a loss there if you did want to utilize a sling system. Thankfully, there are aftermarket options such as some 550 cord or a little bit of rope on the very back here and just tie yourself a loop. If you wanted a 2-position stock, you could attach a Picatinny sling adapter system, so you could still run your lanyard or your loop here, and now you have a 2-position stock. With the hinge system overall, they do utilize a very high strength of spring on the inside. I totally forgot spring for a second, but I got it fairly quickly. So how this works is you have to push the buffer tube plate of the hinge upward, and then that will allow you to rotate it. And then once it's all the way out, it will lock downward back into place, prevent it from moving. So how that works is I put my thumb against this forward plate right behind where that dust cover is. So I put my thumb there, push downwards, and that will rotate the entire stock outward against the receiver. There are some people I have seen with folding stocks, specifically, not with this one in general, but with other folding stocks, is they'll suggest utilizing the stock as a vertical grip. Being the fact that this is still Airsoft, it's not the highest strength of spring, not the greatest of, hinge system in relation to the real world where they do utilize that stock as a vertical grip. I wouldn't suggest it. So just keep that stock down, attach whatever vertical grip you want, in relation to where that hinge is going to work, and then just rock it as is. If you wanted to, I think you could potentially do this where you grab both the magazine and the stock with one hand. It's a little bit meatier of a grip, but you could do it. Same thing with the stock all the way out. You could grab both of those, but at that point, it's just too meaty of a grip that it doesn't make sense. So just grab here, or if you want to run stockless, grab this, or whatever. I wouldn't suggest grabbing the stock by itself. And then to get the stock back into place, same thing, you have to push upwards and then rotate it into place. So with this, I just have to strongman it over into position, and that's how that works. Same overall external features as the previous PRK9, so we don't need to go into detail about any of that. And then last we have the PRK9-L. Now this is my favorite model of the PRK9 series of rifle systems. I think it just looks a little bit better and overall handles a little bit better as well. So let's get into it. The same federal mandated orange tip, a slightly taller iron sight post. What did I say, 12 inches? 12 inches of total rail length on the side here, which the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock position is going to be all M-lock. On the 45s, they have larger serration cuts along the receiver. And again, this is going to be full metal for the handguard system, so it does, keep its strength. But also, they cut it in a way to where it has less overall weight. I mean, this whole rifle is 6 pounds 4 ounces, relatively lightweight. With the more traditional style of AKs, I personally think that they aren't the greatest because they are so front heavy. With this model specifically, with those serrations in the handguard, it does balance out the weight distribution much nicer. So that allows a little bit more ergonomic style of control, which I'm a huge fan of. The entire Picatinny, the entire top rail section is all Picatinny. And if you notice, they have a slightly tiered or a different level at which those rail systems are positioned. So in the very front here, you have a 6 slot Picatinny rail space. You won't be able to run any type of zoom camera because that front iron sight post is in the way, but if you run an offset flashlight or laser, you are able to do that. And you have your gas tube with the rest of the upper receiver, the upper handguard, which oddly enough is removable. So G&G with the PRK9-L did a very good job as to hiding the battery compartment space on this guy specifically. With the other two, that battery had to sit up in the handguard, but with this guy, they made it to where, if I can get it, there we go. They made it to where the battery compartment space is up in the handguard, and you do need to use their tri-panel batteries in order to fit in there. So if you want to get that off, it does hinge out of place. There is a small little lever here on the very top of the trunnion, I think is what that's called. That is supposed to help, but I have found that you don't need to. And just around that barrel is going to be a tri-panel battery compartment space. It is going to be a flimsier plastic, but the intention is that it, one, hides it out of view, so you do still retain a very realistic look of rifle. It keeps it from getting impacted by batteries, or from BBs. You shouldn't be hitting batteries with batteries, and keeps a little bit of rain protection, so if you want to go out and play in a little sprinkle, you can do so. In heavy rain, no go. Definitely don't want to do that with your airsoft guns. So that shields your battery, your tri-panel battery, out of place. So very modular looking, very cool. We do have one that a employee of ours has, and if I remember correctly, he did top wire or side wire external battery compartment box, so one of the PEC 16 boxes, so he could run those larger LiPos very, very easily. And then that upper rail system will just hinge back into place, press downwards, and then rotate your gas block backwards. They have small little holes that cut into the gas block here that rotates. I think that is due to, being able to take a small screwdriver, put it into there, or maybe even a small pen, and help you tighten this removable component tighter to the receiver or to the trunnion, making it to where if you do have any type of flashlight or zeroed lasers, that you then can, keep a zero pretty well. So that's why I think they went with that. Oddly enough, though, the wiring runs in the exact same manner as the previous models. So what I personally did is with this PRK9, I just routed the battery or the wiring system to the dust cover just by pulling it and leading it outward through that trunnion part, and that was literally it. No disassembly at all, just lifted the dust cover and started pulling the wire out carefully. And then it's that simple. So I don't need to disassemble the handguard. I can just run my same battery that I used in the previous models just up in the dust cover here. So very, very easy. Same overall construction of dust cover. Same dealio with that charging handle and hop-up unit. Same overall selector. Same large surface area of magazine release. Same trigger, same grip, same selector, same iron sights, everything else, until we get to the back here, which they do utilize a more traditional triangular stock system here for traditional style of AKs. I would have liked to see a more modernized buffer tube, or maybe even a more slimline retractable stock system like they did with the PRK9-S. For whatever reason, they just didn't do that. It still looks good, has a very cool aesthetic. I think that the length at which this triangular stock has is more than enough for most players. But again, it just doesn't have that wide length of adjustability for the most amount of airsoft players. But I still think this is a good length of pull for the stock. And I can, the handguard over here is super, super minimalist, so I can do my thumb over bore or my C-clamp and do super cool guy tactical stuff. Yeah. Special operator. And again, with other type of AK styles with this triangular handguard, it does the same rotate and fold out of place, with the full size of AKs and with the PRK9-S. They even included the traditional AK sling hook thing. For whatever reason, not gonna shame them on that, but weird that they went with a traditional Sling thing instead of a little bit more modernized. But whatever, it works and it does the same thing. So this entire system assembly for the stock is going to be full metal as well, higher spring strength, and folds and holds well out of the way. Overall, it's just a really, really solid setup. In my opinion, I like this one the best. You know, with the magazines, you don't have a whole lot of options when it comes to the mid-cap styles. And again, you do need to get that magazine lip up into the receiver. So I would personally go with the drum magazine with this setup right here. You know, that just allows me to run it as a high cap, so I can run all 30 rounds. 1,700 rounds, essentially. You know, you're gonna have the last 30 not feed up in there. So I don't have to reload nearly as often as if I run the 40 round mags. With the magazines overall, being that they are a slightly smaller surface area along the very top, you do need to be very careful when getting that magazine into there, because it will either not catch on the lip that it's supposed to, it'll fall a little short and then you won't be able to lock it into place, or it will catch on the feed lip of the hop up, or not the feed lip, but the nozzle piece of the hop up. So you do need to be very careful to get it up inside of there. Do whatever you need to do. You only get 40 rounds, so you're going to be reloading pretty often, and then over time you can get pretty good as far as getting that magazine stick inside of there. I went 3 before I messed it up. So you can get good. It is something that you need to practice at, get a little bit better, get some more miles behind it. And that's really it. Overall, I think these are really, really, really solid options. I mentioned the 2 things externally, which was the folding charging handle and on the shorter guys with the grip options and not be able to use the super long ones. So that is what we have as far as the externals. Let's now look at some of those internal components and let you guys know what's up. So now we're going to talk about some of the internals. Now stay with me because I am going to recap some of the things I said earlier about the overviews. So just hang out. So these are all going to have the 6.08 millimeter brass inner barrels. Obviously, if you go with the tighter bore of inner barrel, you are going to get better consistency as to the BB flight path. And if you upgrade to a stainless steel or even an aluminum, there is going to be less overall bend and flexibility of that inner barrel, you know, especially up in the northern states where we do have very high highs and very low lows as far as that temperature range, and the brass can fluctuate and bend with those increases in temperatures or decreases in temperature, however you want to look at that. So the 2 PRK9, the PRK9 and PRK9-S are going to have inner barrel lengths of 128 millimeters. If you guys do want to upgrade those, that's the exact length as to what's in there, being that these are going to have the 14 counterclockwise threading, so you can get tracer units, mock suppressors, and extend that inner barrel. Well, with the tracer unit, you wouldn't want to extend your inner barrel that much because it'll inhibit the ultraviolet light, but if you get a mock suppressor, that'll be fine. So the rounds per second, which is one of the weird things, you know, we have our velocities, 338, 346, indoor legal, 388, which is going to be outdoor legal, given that extended barrel length, you're going to want to run it outdoors anyway. But the rounds per second, that was kind of what threw us for a loop. So these two are 15 rounds a second, but this one jumped up to 20 rounds a second, and a very consistent 20 rounds a second. And that was a thing that was noted with other review videos as well. So we kind of broke these open just a little bit, evaluated the different MOSFET units, the different motors, and they're all running the G&G 25K motor. They all have the ETU and MOSFET system, which the ETU is an electronic trigger unit, and the MOSFET, which is a little bit different of a system. The ETU is just a small little button that the trigger engages, which is slightly separate from the MOSFET. The ETU kind of works like a micro switch, but kind of not at the same time. It's a little bit weird of a hybrid. The MOSFETs, as far as I can tell, are going to be a Gen 1 style of MOSFET for the version 3 style of gearbox. There are going to be other generations of MOSFETs from G&G, and they're normally really good at labeling what generation comes with what gun, so I still have to believe that these are Gen 1 MOSFETs. So there internally is no difference as far as what we can tell from any of these. So I can't fathom as to why this one has a faster rate of fire than these two. That seems a little backwards, especially since I was utilizing the same battery between all three of these, and I chronoed and tested all of these in the progress of the shortest, the medium length, and the longest last. So overall, this one had less juice to pull from. It was only like 50 shots, but again, less overall juice. Internally, these are all going to have a rotary style of pop-up unit, which is going to be from the top down, so that does allow even more consistency as to the pressure that is hitting the top of the BB. And then with these triggers overall, even though I'm not an AK guy, one of the things that has bothered me is the length of trigger pull on AKs. I mean, you have to pull that trigger a real far distance in order to engage any of the contacts or ETU MOSFET systems that could be inside of whatever AK style of gun you have or is available on the market. With these, I made sure to test the overall limits of the triggers, and this is what I found. From a neutral position from the trigger all the way forward, you need to pull it 6 millimeters before it engages that ETU, that electronic trigger unit, in order to engage the firing system. And then you wouldn't, typically it would reset all 6 millimeters to the neutral position, you know, especially if someone is unaware as to how to ride the line. So you would reset all the way to 6 millimeters, pull it again, pull it again, pull it again, pull it again, which is a very, very long length of travel and is very exhausting. With these systems that have the ETU system, you don't need to do that. Instead of resetting all the way to 6 millimeters, you can reset, I have it noted here, 2 millimeters. So as you pull that trigger, you hit the button, and then you can reset only 2 millimeters, and you can ride the line in order to engage those contact systems, allowing for you to spam that trigger, which is a good thing and not a good thing. At 15 rounds a second, it's not so much of an issue compared to some of the other builds that people are building with 40 rounds a second and have that same 2 millimeter reset. That's where it starts to become an issue, and you know, there's a weird culture thing there, but that's not for this. So you can ride the lightning on semi-automatic in order to like really lay down some BB hate. And the last two things that I have for these guys are kind of just final notes. Well, one of them is kind of a negative overall, but the very first one is that from AirTech Studios, there is going to be a speed trigger conversion that is available over in Europe, not available on the American market yet. I don't know exactly when we'll see that, but there is a speed trigger conversion out there. So what that does is that is a additional material that gets added to the end of the trigger itself, and that engages the button inside of the gearbox long before you actually travel those 6 millimeters. So there may only be, once you install that, only 2 millimeters of take up before you hit the button, and then it'll reset, and now you don't need to pull it nearly as far every single time. You are hitting wall to wall. So that is coming in the future to the American market, hopefully sooner than later. And the other thing is that these do come with Dean's connectors. So overall, that's a very good system, and it's what everyone should be utilizing when they're utilizing the lithium style of batteries that these come with. Which, additional note, with these G&G MOSFET systems, I would not suggest going anything more than a 20 or 25C discharge rating. Our rep from G&G finally notified us that the 25 and 30C batteries, brand dependent, is going to be too high of an energy discharge and can lead to MOSFETs breaking. So we do need to clarify and make sure that people understand you want to stay 20C discharge or lower. So just be aware of that. And the Dean's connectors that are on these are very, very, very tight. I mean, it's when you're installing the battery, it's not an issue and it's not going to fall out. But when you need to remove the battery, that's where it becomes an issue, and you can lead into ripping solder connectors that I have seen with other models, other brands. So you definitely don't want that to occur. So just be very careful when you do remove your battery connector with utilizing Deans, that you don't pull too aggressively and start to rip away at any of those wire connectors. So give you the heads up, give you the disclaimer, and that is what we have as far as the PRK9 rifle systems. If you guys do have any further questions, put them down into the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer any of those, but we are all done here. So you guys take care, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. For whatever reason, even though with it all the way folded,